everyone, and welcome to the Diplomacy Timing Window, where the rules are discussed and our opinions don't matter. My name is Hungry Hippos.
Kazadoom.
And I'm the Half-Heard.
Today, I feel like there should be like huge trumpets playing. We are going to talk about update 1.56, added the Yin Brotherhood. I feel when I looked at this update on the app at the time, the devs, Little SB Buttons, and Serial Guy just did a digital mic drop. This is the final faction that was remaining for Twilight Wars to become the complete base game with all factions. Well, I shouldn't say the complete base game, with all factions of the base game now implemented. And
most major components, yeah.
Yeah, I was somewhat giddy in a very nerdy way, but I was just super proud of Little SB Buttons and Serial Guy. My hat off to them. We three have been there from the beginning, and this is amazing. Not yet, which surprised me. Not yet a full complete change of update 1.56. I thought it would have been like update 2.0 or something like that. But anyway, what do you guys think?
No, it's great.
I'm stoked.
Those 4 words are really underselling the amount of work and dedication that goes into that. Just like edit the Yin Brotherhood.
Yeah, I love that change log.
And I mean, 3 words is just the faction name. So yeah, it's added X is like 2 things. And yeah, it's just amazing to see all the factions in the game now. All the, I think, complex hurdles that hit assignments caused.
So
over those, and yeah, it's just great to have the game progressing like that.
Yeah, I have yet to play them on the app. So let's nerd out and let's share some information.
Yes. Here we go. So I made this nice sheet summarizing all the abilities that they have. What makes them unique.
Beautiful.
Little pixel art to frame it.
Yeah, the little symbol and the upcoming pixel characters that I'm designing that I'm pretty proud of.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I think in the Twilight universe, the Yin Brotherhood, according to mythology, are descendants from Soul. They just, decided to go uber
a
cult.
Dude, I believe.
Degenerate
a dude.
And cloning.
a single soul dude who cloned himself ad infinitum because he was dying, if I'm not mistaken. I think he had some form of critical disease, and so he decided to clone himself, create a cult, and that cult is based around suicide. It's that got dark.
And conversion therapy.
So that touches on the very first thing that makes the Yin Brotherhood sort of interesting is indoctrination. At the start of ground combat, you can spend 2 influence to replace one of your opponent's participating infantry with 1 infantry from your reinforcements.
I love it.
That cult at its finest.
It's like a buffed Megan.
This is one of the best abilities in the game when you have to defend a planet. It's just ridiculous how much infantry you need to bring to take over a planet, or how little you need to bring to take over a planet.
It's interesting. Do you really think it is a buffed Megan? If I was to compare my desire for, say, a Megan versus a Yin Brotherhood's indoctrination ability, I might choose Megan because, what's another 9 roll versus not having to worry about 1 other infantry on the planet, at least.
It's just that you get it. It's basically a +2 in terms of dude differential.
Well, so like
he loses 1, you get 1.
Yeah, the Megan Omega just removes an enemy infantry, whereas indoctrination, at a cost, of course, right? Megan is free, but at a cost of 2 influence, you not only remove 1, but you get to add 1 of yours, right? So it's a complete it's a complete flip, right?
Yeah,
you can go from a 1v2 to a 2v1 instead of from a 2v1 to a 1v1.
You can land 1 against 2 and fight 2v1.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
I suppose that's true, yes.
And
so
actually, that's a good point.
Megan
is completely.
You just go down and You just land and convert the last infantry and don't fight at all and just gain an infantry from it.
And that's a good point as well, because Megan is completely defensive, whereas Indoctrination is both, can be used offensive or defensively. Right.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's right. I
Yeah.
always think of the Yin as invading, but it's also like you come to their planet, you're going to have some traders.
Yeah, exactly.
And in that sense, I also have to say the Omega Greyfire mutagen is basically the same ability that you can lend to other players now. I mean, it only works if there's 2 infantry that.
And I love that it's.
Fight.
I love that it's a non-Yin, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, like for example, some of the like the Sardak promissory note, right? The I forget what it's called, but the Sardak promissory note where you give someone else your +1 in the ground combat instead of you, right? It can be used against someone else, but it also can be used against you, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas the Greyfire mutagen is foolproof. You don't have to worry about it coming back to bite you.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
All around
good
card.
The other aspect, go for it.
Whenever Yin is in the game, you kind of don't want to have planets with 2 infantry on it on the board anymore, because 3 is good, because then you still have 2 left if they take the Greyfire on you. If you have 2, it always ends up against you with like 2 to 1 against you, so it's kind of useless to have 2 on a planet with this thing around if the in player sells it frequently.
So the idea
it kind of completely shifts the infantry game on the board if this is around.
Don't lose space combat against the Yin, basically. Yeah. And that's where their other ability comes in. Devotion. After each space battle round, you may destroy one of your cruisers or destroyers to produce a hit and assign it to one of your opponent's ships. And this is where Suicide's aspect of the call comes in. So what do you think of I'm picturing right now Mario Kart, where you have like 3 red shells around you, and you would do the same thing of destroyers. You just bring a bunch of destroyers, they're the red shells, and then you just fling them.
Pew pew. That's economy right there for sure.
It is a poor man's. What's the Sardak Nor dreadnought called?
Exotrireme.
Yeah.
It's a poor man's exotrireme, but it's still amazing to snipe a carrier that brings the infantry to take over planets and all that stuff. So
it's a lot cheaper for one, right? So that's great.
You have it from the get-go, yeah.
And you have it from the get-go. And yeah, I think like rogue destroyers just sniping carriers, and you know, if even dreads or flagships that have already sustained, yeah. Or if you're, you know, you got the direct hit in the in your back pocket. It's scary. It's actually quite terrifying. Right now I'm playing
it's one of those abilities that just
of your 18 games
of my well, sorry, of the new games I've started. Most of them I am Yin, but I think there's at least one where I'm facing a Yin, and it's very scary. To always have to be worried about that.
And honestly, for me, I still have to say that the base destroyer in the early game is probably the best unit in the game, or at least in the early game, because as long as there's fighters in the game or in the fight, you have 2 anti-fighter on 9, 1 roll on 9, and as Yin, then you can also suicide your
and then guaranteed hit. Yeah. Like it's just incredible.
On average, you do about the same as a dreadnought, and then you can suicide as Yin, which is pretty amazing.
Let's talk about the tech. I've got a question. I feel like my nerd card's going to take a hit here. For example, with Impulse Core, it's very similar to Devotion, except this time you can assign it to a non-fighter ship. But my question is, can you use Devotion and Impulse Core during the same window of start of space combat?
Well, Devotion is after space combat.
Oh, after, and this is at the start, so you can use them both. Okay.
So you can, and I think that's the synergy with them, is that you go in, you throw one out there, right? Say there's a sustained dread or a flagship, right? You snipe it out at the beginning of combat, and then you take out the stragglers at the end, right? You can take out the
there. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that because Impulse Core only assigns it. The opponent has to assign it to non-fighter ship, so you can't choose which ship you hit
so
with
it's not
Impulse
as
Core.
I mean, it's still good in certain situations, right? Like if there is, you know, a straggling dreadnought or something like that, that you can just snipe before it even gets a chance to do anything, right?
Yeah, my big problem is with Impulse Core, it's at the start of space combat. That means usually you don't fight more than one round.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you go round 2, which means that you don't get to roll with that ship, and you don't get to anti-fighter barrage with that ship either.
Yeah, it seems to me Impulse Core being a 2-level yellow might not be worth it, but then again, you're Yin. If you space combat for longer than a round, it's going to be tough. It's also super expensive over time if you're using Devotion and Impulse Core every round.
I don't know. For me, this tech is basically useless. That should have needed an Omega for me, but yeah.
Well,
it's sad. I don't like it at all.
That's fair. I mean, they got a lot of really great, and you know, we're gonna, I guess, go into the next tech, which I love Yin Spinner. I'll say,
spin to Yin,
spin to Yin,
to win, spin to win.
So, yeah, maybe it's not too bad that they have one that's not super powerful, and more just situational, I would say, right?
Their base abilities are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So to have their techs be equally so would be lopsided. But Yin Spinner, after you produce hits, place up to 2 infantry from your reinforcements on a planet you control, or in a space area that contains 1 or more of your ships. And this could be anywhere.
Right? I love it. Any planet. That's right. Anywhere.
Anywhere you have stuff.
Oh, so handy. Just so incredibly useful, this card.
Yeah.
You know, and the way I've been playing Yin right now is, you know, I've gotten Yin Spinner every time, get the infantry upgrade, and then you're everywhere in just so much quantity.
Yeah, this is a step better than transit diodes.
I would say so.
Why move if you can just generate them? Yeah, absolutely
exactly.
Correct. Yeah.
And actually, I do like just getting construction early as well, and getting a lot of space stocks down, because then you just, you know, with Sarween, with Yin Spinner, it doesn't even matter. You're just putting infantry everywhere, and it's like, good lord.
Yep. I mean, that's the same strategy that I employed, but I'm not sure if, I mean, what you described as getting a lot of docks, basically plaster your path to Mechatol with docks.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't need to actually move stuff around anymore, because you just have to move 1 space, because you literally can't move further. The other thing is to just go blue and then go into the green path. Just so you have Carrier 2, Fighter 2, whatever, or Dread 2, but
it probably just depends on the map setup, but like, I agree. Like, if you can just, like you said, just pave a path to Mechatol, then you don't even really have to worry about movement, right? You have your
oh no, we have father duties visitor taking into account here.
Speaking of cloning yourself,
my wife's coming in already.
All good.
All right. All right. We can leave that in, actually.
Yeah, I don't
Everybody knows we're fathers.
We are responsible people, and podcast is purely secondary.
Oh, I thought you were going to say primary, because clearly we got that baby out of here.
No, it's all good. The editing will be light.
Yeah.
Well, so we've talked about the text, the base, and the promissory note. My favorite part of Yin, absolutely,
and it's missing. It's missing here.
Is the flagship?
Yes.
The Van Hoog.
Van Hoog.
Yeah.
Van Hoog.
Yes, this ship, combat completely useless at 9 times 2. Capacity, 3, it's fine, whatever. It's the same as anything. But why I love this ship and this faction is when this ship is destroyed, destroy all ships in this system. I've used this with a warfare, and it's beautiful. You have this system just full of ships, and all you need to do is fly this useless flagship into it, and everything's destroyed. And the face you see in someone feeds me.
And it's also the fun thing where you don't have to use sustained damage; you just can choose.
You can just choose.
How many times? The few times I've used it, the fear has just meant that you retreat as soon as possible in hopes that nothing could potentially happen. Or, and this action card's not yet in the Twilight Wars game, but to be able to retreat immediately. I forget the name of the action.
Skilled retreat.
Skilled retreat. Yeah, so skilled retreat's key if you're going to go up against that. Having said that, it's always fun to head into a Sarball or or go to Rex.
Just saying Sarballs, you don't actually kill the dogs.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, it's a dog,
which is super dumb.
Yeah, or a Barony Dreadfleet, or or a Muat Double War Sun. So many applications, so much joy.
That is the thing that I'm really missing from Prophecy of Kings, aside from little other things. There's no reason not to do a Death Ball in the normal base game. But this ship really prevents you from clustering up all your ships in one thing. It's like, nope, you shouldn't do that. Flank speed, bam.
Yeah, and is it just me, or do you get this ship out as soon as you can?
No, I usually don't.
Oh, I'm all for. I'm like, bring it out.
How would you ever take Yin's home system? It's just impossible. There's tons of infantry. There's a flagship on top. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but sometimes though you do it for the fun, for the kicks. You just got to take it out there and use it.
Yeah. I bring it out for the fear factor, like you were saying, Hippos. It's the psychological game, right?
Yeah. So, having said all that, what is the counter to Yin? What factions can withstand, I don't know, a Yin destroyer barrage or the infantry storm?
Just don't let them get to you. It's so slow.
They are slow, so yeah, you could just I don't know.
I'm in general not feeling the strength of Yin as you do, I guess. I feel like they're middle strength faction. They're kind of in the middle field when it comes to power level, but yeah.
I guess they suffer
so they're definitely not going to go down the blue path.
And if you do, you're missing out on some other great techs. I guess it's a little tough with the two commodities, right? I always hate the two commodity factions. That's always, it makes I'm in a game with Yin right now where I'm against Mentak, and the 10 trade good stage 2 objective just came out, and I'm like, I'm never ever scoring that.
But that is not a Yin thing, that is a Mentak thing.
Yeah. Well, but even still, I find it's difficult to like accumulate when you're a two commodity faction.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're spending that influence, and sometimes it's gonna be your trade goods.
Exactly.
And it is really nice to have 2 trade goods in the backhand just for the 2 influence.
Yeah. It's because you're not always going to be lucky getting the 0-2 or the 1-2 influence planets to have ready for your indoctrination. So yeah. Usually you want those trade goods in hand for that. So, I mean, maybe it is that they can suffer from some objectives. I mean, conversely, like I think it's always funny how you say, the flagship comes out. Oh, don't bring out your flagships because destroy their greatest. You don't want to be a target. But I think they're a great answer to the destroy your greatest. Such a double-edged sword in that sense.
On the other hand, unveiling your flagship is kind of ridiculous with Yin.
Is it even possible? I guess
you don't need to blow it up.
Yeah, you don't need to blow it up.
I'm curious as far as a combat goes. Say you initiate a combat as Yin, you destroy the entire fleet and your flagship. Who wins that battle?
That's a draw, I believe.
Is it a draw? Interesting.
Yep.
So no one would be able to score any objective there if you were trying to win something.
Yeah, that's right. No spark, no unveil. I guess you could score destroy their greatest is the one thing you could do.
Sure. So is there anything else about the Yin that we want to touch on before we move on?
I think I'm happy. They're great. I'm happy to see them in. Like you sharing your sentiment that it's just nice to have all the 17 base game factions in now. It's the game feels whole.
Yes, it's exciting. The selection is there, and I'm super happy about I'm super happy, proud of the devs. So, moving on to our next update. The number is 2.0 now. Whoa. And I think that's something that we predicted several episodes ago. Yeah. Trying to figure out why Yin was 1.56, and now we're at 2.0. And the 2.0 was actually a big one. A lot of user interface changes. So we can go through some of those features, but in general, what is your guys's impressions of the new format?
It's great to have the buttons all under the board. It really helps get you a better overview. You don't have to scroll around as much on the phone to do things, and they're way more descriptive now. You don't have the just green check mark, red cross to cancel. You have really text there, and also the split between pass and pass on ability, which is nice because passing in general is reserved for this like huge thing that you don't do anything anymore this turn. And that's now a separate thing from passing on an ability, which is nice because you don't fear. The fear factor is lower.
My preferred update, feature I should suppose with this update is when they change the position of the unit models and the button for seeing enemy units, and it's just top and bottom of the planet. But I think actually just recently there's a new
and you got the sword and the shield too.
Yes, a new sub update where they're just in a rows right in top of each other. So you don't have to go searching for the enemy units as well.
You don't have to press the button for the enemy units anymore. Yeah,
it's fantastic. I really enjoyed that upgrade.
Yeah, as a primarily mobile user, I really appreciate the updates. Makes it a lot simpler to navigate around and not having to pan and zoom so much. I find. Yeah, I really like just how they've really made that focus on the enlarged system hex. I think that was a great change. I think if I had to choose a favorite, I'd probably go with that as well. I really like the enlarged system hex revisions, and all the new buttons are great, right? You don't similarly, you don't have to go to the top of the screen to hit a green check mark to go back to the bottom of the screen to hit a pass. Everything's in the one area now. So especially on mobile, it makes it really simple to just click through everything. And yeah, I guess I like actually how all the unit information is now when you hover and it's all there. I guess that was kind of always there before. But again, it's just like really kind of tightening up the UI. I think it looks good.
Yeah. One thing that in discussions in the feedback Discord channel came up was actually with the buttons. You could add buttons for certain texts and abilities there as well if you wanted to. So for instance, if you have fleet logistics at the end of the round, it would just pop up, take another action or stuff like that. That's specific to techs, and they could only pop up there as option if you have the tech.
So more kind of automation thing, as opposed to trying to remember yourself.
Yeah. Exactly, now, and I know the devs have.
I don't know how hard it is to code. But...
It's not about the difficulty to code. The hesitation, I think, is around that, like, aspect of, you know, Twilight Imperium as a game is super complex, and part of it is like there is that learning curve of just being able to remember all the things you can do, right? And so if the app is basically doing a lot of that for you, you know, how much are you taking away from a player, in the sense that, you know, it's almost like, is it, I guess the question is it part of the game that you should be, that remembering all of that makes you a better player or not, right? Because you'll bring players up more to the same level by introducing these types of features where you're reminding them what abilities they can use. I mean, I'll tell you, in my first, even still, but more so in my first, you know, 10 games or whatever, I found it so hard to keep track of, you know, and I'm talking real life games, right? Live in person, to keep track of all the things that I can do. And then as the game drags on too, you get tired and you forget even more.
Yeah.
And it's like, but isn't that part of the experience? I don't know. I think that's
I would agree with that line of thought. I think that the idea of, you have all these selectable options, and in some sense you are leading this armada, this series of Sarballs and different planets. You have all of these abilities, but you're not always going to be able to track them as a leader, so to speak.
But the thing is, I could either always use notes to remind me of that, take forever to do my turns, or have the options readily available for me.
Yeah,
but I'd rather. I mean, taking notes is part, in my opinion, that's part of you being that like leader that is like, you know, thematically, right? Keeping track of everything.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas if it's options, then that autonomy is taken from you. The game is doing this for you. So in a sense, you don't have to be as good at the game to be as good as someone else. In a way.
But my counterpoint there would always be that between timing windows, it could be up to 14 days.
Yeah.
And it's super hard to keep track. I mean, at the table, you know, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, I'll use fleet logistics, take another action. Here, it's like, okay, I play this thing. We go through several time windows, and then after maybe a week or two, I get to get a notification while my kid is crying. I was like, yeah, I'll pass. And they're like, God, why did I do this? Why did I not take 2 more days to respond to this notification?
Yeah. I have a philosophy here that it may or may not be relevant, but I feel like it is. I don't want someone to treat me like an idiot. I don't want to be spoon-fed a plot when I'm watching a TV show. I don't want to be babied when it comes to certain things, because it's like playing baseball and having the ball on a tee versus it being pitched to you. You're still playing baseball, but I want that challenge, and I want it to be earned.
I think I've come to a point where I can appreciate both sides of the argument, because I definitely agree that, you know, while maybe it's much more relevant in a live in-person game, right? Just like as Kaza kind of noted, the kind of atmosphere in the Twilight Wars app is tons of congruent games that you're playing at the same time, and games can be like a week between you doing stuff, right? And the nature of async as well is that you're doing it almost half paying attention sometimes, right? And so, you know, I think there is an argument to say that some of that can be taken out of the user's control in a way, right? And just lay their options out for them and let them make the strategic moves in that sense. And maybe the middle ground is a feature at game creation to make the game, you call it either competitive or casual, right? And in a competitive game, you have hippos, you got you're satisfied because now it's like you're saying you got to remember everything. It's like you got to be on the ball. It's you know, it's as competitive as it would be at a table, versus a more casual game where it's like, I don't want to have to worry between, you know, I'm on a phone call or I'm, you know, eating dinner or all these terrible things that I shouldn't be doing. While I'm trying to play a game.
I mean, it's quite questionable whether or not you should have 20 ongoing games as well, but
Yeah.
Oh, I feel
Well,
attacked. I feel attacked.
I would say to this point, in the spirit of getting games flowing faster, it's probably better to give users more direct information without them having to scroll through interfaces.
Well, and I think it also, there's the argument for making it more beginner friendly, right? So that it is such a game with such a huge learning curve, and I think giving that little bit of a break, especially because of the way the async works, where there is some undo, but you know, there you can be a lot more forgiving at a table in person, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, you forgot to take your trade good. Yeah, go ahead, take your trade good, right?
You know,
that's just not an option here.
I had no idea that this is going to turn into a debate episode. But I think I'm gonna
always be ready for a debate.
Yes, this is true. I should. It's so much fun things to discuss here. But I think I'm gonna conclude us here. I'm gonna say that congrats again to the devs. I'm really happy we have our 17th base faction, and also we're now at update 2.0, and it looks beautiful.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the future.
Yep, so, and they're keeping it up. Seems.
It is. They are definitely keeping it up. So I think we spent enough time stalling in this timing window. So let's hit the pass button and keep the game moving.